maybe we could start with you speaking to, gosh, maybe that just core piece of like what um, what brought you into these realms of storytelling, and why is this something that you feel is important to committing, gosh, a lifetime to?
Well, my mother, my father, my two grandmothers, one of my grandfathers, and my great grandfather were storytellers. Okay. And so, like, I kind of came up with that. I'm an old guy. So, back in the 40s and 50s, we didn't have a television. Okay. Even, before when nobody did. And then for a long time, living where we lived, we didn't have a television when a few other people did. And that was when this big, gigantic box with this little round circle in the middle, which you view. So at any rate, much of our stuff was done. Much of our stuff was done on, speaking back and forth. And of course, I came up like that with everybody. Like everybody had a story to tell. Everybody had a story to tell, right? And everybody would tell stories. I moved to Milwaukee when I was 11, and I found like street storytelling, which was totally different, where everybody stands on the corner and it's basically a competition to see, who wants to listen to who. And if it's a little bit boring, they say, okay, shut up. Okay, somebody else say something, right? It was very, very, how could I say, ruthless. And then there was also like the challenges of money, right? There's a hat, everybody puts money in the hat, and whoever decides who's the best storyteller can take the money, right? And of course, I lost a long time because it would be in a barbershop and everybody would be grown except me. And so I would always I hear them say, well, I was down in Chicago. And when I was in Chicago, let me tell you what happened. So I put my money in the pocket and I said, when I was down in Chicago, they shut up, boy, you never been in Chicago. So, it was ruthless. It was fun, but it was ruthless. And so that was street storytelling, which is very much different than the country storytelling. Okay. So then when around 13 years old, I joined what was, the youth council of the NAACP and part of the civil rights movement, et cetera. And then stories had a purpose to encourage, and stories had a purpose to elevate. Stories had a purpose to embolden people to do the things that we were doing, which the law said was illegal, and that's simply protesting and walking down the street. So then the stories for me took a different turn. It became what I figure the service to people whose voices are not heard. So therefore, rather than just me tell a story, or rather than just me, reflect on my personal experience, then I took as my obligation and commitment to speak the stories and the voices of those who never get a chance to be heard. And of course, that got me in a lot of trouble, got me fired from different places and everything like that. But it's still my commitment. And that's what I have my stories to serve. Okay. And that doesn't mean serve any particular group of people, because every culture's got a group of people who do not ever have a chance to have their voices heard. Okay. Because I figure that anybody can tell once upon a time and this is what happened next. I mean, you can read that in a book, right? So then my position is like, okay, that's the commitment I live out of. And that's what led me to be more or less well known, okay, but also in many circles known as the troublemaker, which is cool.
So you made a choice point based on what you were committed to.
Well, yes, because I'm a good entertainer. Sometimes like I'm going places where they just want me to entertain. And if they want me to entertain, it's $3,000. And those who will pay that, I'll entertain them. But if they're not going to pay me that, I'm not going to entertain them. I'm going to tell them what's up. And from my perspective, from the perspective of people who don't get a chance to be heard, and many places as a result of that decided not to pay me, which is cool. I don't worry about it.
Mm-hmm. When we were talking, you started, we talked, gosh, months ago, this up. And you said something that has haunted me and bothered me and tickled me. And I'm so excited for you to really dig into it today. But this idea of what happens when we take a story from another culture and bring it to this one.
Okay. Well,
and when we take them across continents, across oceans, what happens when we change the meaning? What are we responsible to? Would you call this kidnapping a story? I know that you've got, I know that you've got strong beliefs on this, and I'm just excited to speak with someone who's thought so much about this and does this, you know, and works that way in terms of what do you feel like is your responsibility to the storytellers who created it and as a storyteller who's traveling with it?
Well, here's what I say. I say that, like, you see, if you go back to the stories as they were told, okay, they reflect the worldview of the people. Now we have the opportunity to understand the worldview of the people. But when we take it and twist it the way Disney and others have, we just totally take away what we might understand just by looking at this, you know, just by looking at it in its original form. Okay. All right. And of course, Disney took it and he like profoundly racist, you know, almost everything that comes out of the Disney studios is racist. Okay. Because the characters who are bad, they're black, got black hair. Okay. And what's this? A Lion King? There's a blue-eyed lion. Okay. That's the good guy. Right. And Scar and all them, they're black or whatever like that, or got black streaks. And that's straight racism. That's all it is. So the point I'm saying is that when it's done like that, okay, it reflects this culture, but it doesn't reflect any of the cultures it came from. And that's the other stories too. Those are the stories like, say, for example, Cinderella, the story of, say, Mulan. Everybody's kind of like, if you've ever seen any Disney, they got the movie out, Mulan, and, you know, several things like that, okay? And as a result, we don't see what the people who wrote the story wanted to tell and how it reflected their worldview. If we could see the worldview in their eyes, then we'd understand more about the cultures rather than thinking that somehow Western rational culture is superior to everything else, when clearly it is not, okay? It's just more destructive. See, wherever Western culture went, it destroyed three things, and these are very important things that it destroyed. It first destroyed the people's religion, okay? And then also it destroyed the people's economic structure, okay? It destroyed the people's political structure, right? And it also destroyed their family culture. That's four. So wherever they went, they did that, right? Without even saying, this is the way the people live. This is the way the people have lived for thousands of years. And we have something to learn from that. So if we can go back and look at the story, we get a little more understanding about really what the people were thinking, rather than thinking it's something else, okay? And if you don't mind, I'll give you a quick example, if that's okay, if you don't mind me keeping talking, you know, because I can go on and on and on and on and on. I'll pause if anybody wants to say anything, you know.
Just so you know, what we might do is we'll invite people to post questions in their chat room as we go on. We'll just put them up.
Okay, so if somebody has a question, you can like pose a question, but let me give you a quick example. The quick example is about Gluskabe, and this is a Wakanabe story, and a Wakanabe was a part of a culture inside of the Algonquin Nation. And in the Wakanabe story about Gluskabe was created, and I'll rush through it so I don't, you know, take 30 minutes to tell the whole story, but I'll give you a basic synopsis. Gluskabe, when Gichimanatu, the Great Spirit, made everything, he made everything, and he let the, you know, all the animals walk and let the birds fly and the fish swim, but he hadn't finished Gluskabe. He only made Gluskabe from the waist up. Gluskabe saw all the other animals and he was like, you know, impatient. So he decided rather than waiting on Gichimanatu, the Great Spirit, he would just make his own legs. So he began to like pull at the dirt to make his own legs. And where he pulled up the dirt, right, he pulled up the mountains that exist. And where he pulled, that was the valleys. Then he reached to the top of the mountains to help himself stand up, and his fingers pulled down. And that's where the tributaries run down into the valleys of the river all the way out to the sea. But when Gluskabe had made his legs, he was proud. Gichimanatu made everybody else, but Gluskabe made himself. So he went around bragging, I'm Gluskabe, I made me. I am Gluskabe, I made me. Gichimanatu made you, but look at me, I made me. And then Gluskabe, it was hot. And so Gluskabe went to the mountain and captured the sky eagle. He said, I'll let you go if you'll flap your wings at the top of the sky mountain. So the great eagle went up and flapped his wings at the top of the sky mountain. And then the wind started blowing, but it was blowing and rushing. And then the waves were crashing. So Gluskabe said, I'll capture you again if you don't slow down and be smoother. So the great eagle slowed down and was smoother. And then the waves started just flowing. So Gluskabe said, I made my own legs. I called the wind to blow. I call the sea to quiet. See, listen to everybody obeys my command. And then Gluskabe said to the sky eagle, go to the north mountain, it's hot. flap your wings. And then it got cold, okay? When little snowflakes started falling, he saw the squirrel. He said, look, you better gather something. You're small, gather something and save it for this cold time that's coming. So the squirrel started hunting, and Blue Scabi said, I called the wind to blow, the sea to quiet, the squirrel to hunt. Everybody obeys my command. And as he was walking through the forest, he saw the bear, and he said, look, the bear wouldn't change his pathway. So Blue Scabi wrestled with the bear, captured the bear, said, I'll let you go if you sleep in the winter. The bear said, okay. So he said, I'm Blue Scabi. I call the wind to blow, the sea to quiet, the squirrel to hunt, and the great bear to sleep. Everybody obeys my command. He went around saying, I'm Blue Scabi, I'm great. And he saw a man one time, and he said, I'm Blue Scabi, I'm great. I call the wind to blow. Kichimana who made you, I made me. I call the wind to blow, the sea to quiet, the squirrel to hunt, and the great bear to sleep. Everyone obeys my command. And the old man said, well, what about GGs? He said, GGs? He said, I'm not sure the GGs would obey your command. Well, where can I find GGs? He said, well, any home. So Blue Scabi went to the first home he saw. He pounded another knocking post, and he said, I'm Blue Scabi. I called this, the whole list. I don't have to go through the whole list again every time. But he said, I bring GGs out here, so I will challenge him for a fight, and he will obey my command. And they said, well, we can't do that. Well, why? Well, come on in. They came, and he said, where is this GG? He said, right over here, Blue Scabi. Right here, right here. It's what? And there on a rabbit fur was a little baby. He said, what, this? He said, this is GG's. Just a minute. This little thing, it has no fangs, it has no claws, it doesn't even have hair. You think it can beat me? Ha! I'm Blue Scabi. I call the wind to blow. And the little baby started whimpering. He said, look, I command you be quiet. I'm Blue Scabi. And the baby cried louder. He said, look, I said be quiet. And the baby cried louder and louder. So the woman came over, put the baby in the little rabbit fur in a basket that she had woven, and she took strips of leather, of skin that she had made into a rope. She threw them on the top of a tree, and she hung the basket in the tree. And then whenever the breeze was moving and the tree was swaying, the basket was swinging, and the baby went to sleep. And when the baby was there, as it was going back and forth, she sang the baby a song. And the song went, Gigi's away ho, Gigi's way ho. Gigi's away ho, way hey hey ho. And Blue Scabi said, just a minute, hold on. I am great. I made me. I called the wind to blow, the sea to quiet, the squirrel to hunt, the great bear to sleep. I am great, but also what also must be just as great is this one called woman, because she got this disobedient little thing to obey. So see, it reflects a culture of the Native Americans that men and women are absolutely equal. And that's not in European culture, see? And also that's a song, that we think that came from somewhere else, but that's Gigi Saweho, Gigi's Weho, Gigi Saweho, we he he ho, Gigi Saweho, Gigi's Weho, Gigi Saweho, we he he ho, where we call it Rockabye Baby, right? So if we understood where it came from, understood its origin, we would get a glimpse into how the people who are the original people in this continent see the world. But we don't do that. They're savages. Shoot them, kill them. Oh, John Wayne, I got all that blah, blah, right? Anyway, that's one example. And there's 5 or 6 other cultures I refer to when I give this particular lecture, where everyone has that example, see? And if we took it from them, we'd have insight into how they see the world, okay?
That's such a great example of a story that was, I keep using the language kidnapped,
Well, kidnapped is a good, that's good. But you see, it was, go ahead.
It feels like it's held hostage, right? Because it's we've got the body of it, right? But it's it from actually living in the world in the way that it was meant to live.
Right. Well,
and it's when I hear you say that, I'm like, oh my God, you mean that if we knew that original story and that song lived through us, and every time we sing a song, we'd be singing about how equally important women are than men.
there you go. See, that's the point. If we knew the song every time we sing it to a baby, we're saying, I don't care if you're a male or a female. The essence of the song is that you are just as equal as anybody else, which is totally contrary to Western culture. Unless you go back far enough before the beginning of rational thought. If you go back far enough in Western culture, you get Buddhisha, you get various people, the whole concept of the Wiksa, okay? The concept of Wiksa, now what they call the Wiccans and all that stuff, right? But in Old English, craft means power. And Wicca, or Wixa, however you want to pronounce it, Wixa was the one who embodied the power of women, also the compassion of women, also the protective nature of women. And craft meant power. So Wixa craft, where we get witchcraft, meant the power of women. Boy, we get that here? No, witchcraft, that's evil. See, that's evil. All right, they're going to hell. They're going to burn in hell. Yep, yeah, all of them. Yeah, right. See, and we never ever look at that, and we think that European culture has always been like it is, but no, not until the advent of rational thought that came out of Rome. And when it came out of Rome, Rome was a warfare country, and so everybody it conquered, it considered itself superior. And they always thought, if you look at some old Roman stuff and old Roman writings, you find that they talk about the superiority of their culture, of their idea, which is the origin of white supremacy. But go back far enough, you'll find the concept that women and men are equal in every culture until the invasion of the Arabs and the invasion of the Europeans, after they were invaded and controlled by Hyksos, and also invaded and controlled by people who came in from Eurasia to bring in the idea of warfare. When they brought the warfare in, and I'm going to make this quick so we can get back to answers, but when the warfare came in, then anybody who's a war culture, such as the United States culture, is a war culture. And every war culture, men are more important than women, because they're basically better warriors, bigger, stronger, and more savage, okay? So in every war culture also in this whole world, women are not respected. In the old traditional agricultural cultures, women were respected because like they were most important to produce people, okay? And also the concept of God was feminine, okay? Because in the concept of God, like what do we do as in agriculture? Oh, we put a seed in and there's a mound and life comes forth. That's a feminine principle. So life depended on the seeds we put in the ground or the things that grew from the ground. Therefore, that was a God force. So God was seen until like fairly recently in human existence as a female energy. If you want to, there's a book by, oh God, I forgot her name. It's called When God Was a Woman. Her name is, oh, I forgot her name, but it's a woman who made it, right? And, you know, you see that, you see all the examples of like how Easter, the word Easter originally came from the name of a female God force, you know? And so I could go on, but I'll, you know, let me be quiet and let people in.
This is great because you're actually bringing us back to one of our very first classes, which was with Stephen Jenkinson. I don't know if you guys are remembering his adoration of language and history. And, you know, and it's like what I'm hearing in you is I'm like, and I've been doing this for a while, I'm like catching the scent of what stories did we lose? I feel like there's all stories that have been buried and are waiting for us to reveal them because they actually, there's so much potency and power when we actually understand the real story. You know, and we've been living in the legacy of the story of patriarchy, and we don't know what's underneath it, nor do we know how it came into such extreme. I'm like the story that I'm sniffing out as a personal note is I'm really sniffing out like where did the imbalance begin? You know, what was the we look at least on this continent, that there's always a pendulum. One thing's always in too much power and then it's moving to the other. And so I'm really curious about those stories actually was that when did the matriarch perhaps, or when did the feminine get so out of control that the patriarch decided to respond?
Well, I don't think it was that. I don't think it was that it got out of control. Okay. I really think what it was is that, see, if you look at the area, you know, pardon me for telling, you know, getting the history, but you look at the area called the steppes, that plains area between what we call Europe and Asia, that area called the steppes. But there was a profound famine there. And anytime there's poverty, okay, you get violence. That's what's going on in our cities today. You know, it's nobody's fault other than the fact that poverty, you know, produces, you know, like a very, very, very competitive society, and competition ultimately becomes conflict. And when conflict is organized, and it's war, okay? And that's all based on poverty, okay? Now, what happened in that area is that when that came, okay, they fought each other. And then over like maybe 100 years, 5 or 6 generations, all they did was fight. And then men are stronger, of course. And so then it became celebrated that men are more important than women in every war culture, including the United States. Okay, men are more important than women because they're stronger and harder. So what they did was, it wasn't so much that the women were too strong. They just overran any culture that was not a war culture. And they declared themselves again superior, okay, because how easily they destroyed the other cultures. So I'm not sure, and again, you could be correct. I'm just like, I haven't found evidence that women did something or got too strong, which led into that, okay? It just got to be concept, desperation, and a society based on desperation, a culture based on desperation produces whoever can steal the most, whoever can gain the most, whoever can get the most is like the most powerful and the most important. And you see, that's why we have this government in the United States today that's based on that. It doesn't care how you get it. All you have to have in the United States to be important and respected is money. Nobody cares how you got it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and like, I'm with you. And then I'm also like, I can't help but sniff around. And one of the things that really got me thinking about this was, I love watching, we're going to talk about the Black Panther, but I love watching what's coming to the mythology of Hollywood, you know? And when I saw The Mummy, and the only reason I watched it, because I just wanted to see this, because I was like, oh, that's what men are so afraid of. Like that.
Which mummy are you talking about? The one with Tom Cruise?
Most recent version. But wait, I have to say that Noelle has a question.
Oh, sure.
This is one comment back, and she says, are these stories that we lose, or stories that are waiting to be remembered?
Okay, both, and stories that have been purposely destroyed to serve the war culture. Okay. So it's like, I appreciate this piece that you're bringing up too. What I'm hearing is like this responsibility that we really understand what it is to live in our times, that we really have to go on a pretty like heat-seeking mission to understand what are all the stories that aren't on the forefront, and not only understand what aren't there, but really understand why aren't they there, like, and how is that shaping culture, our belief systems, our values, what we're willing to accept, and even believe. And the first thing I had to do, set my arrogance aside. Set my arrogance aside. Recognize it like, whoa, I really don't know anything. I'm just arrogant enough to think that I do. See? So when I was able to set that aside, I could look at it not from the perspective of what I've been trained to look at, because I've been very well trained by white American society, okay? College degrees, taught at two universities and a college, et cetera, et cetera. I've been well trained, right? So of course it comes out of that, like now I know all that I need to know because I am a college, instructor, professor, blah, blah, blah. So you see, that's a kind of arrogance that blinds us from really looking at something, It's like saying that America is the greatest country on earth, when it's probably the worst. I've lived in several other countries, and all of them have been better than living here for me, right? So the thing about it, if you say that this is the greatest country on earth, right? The problem is that now there's no incentive to make any positive changes. It's like taking the most ignorant child in class and say, you are the smartest child in class, right? And they keep propping them up like that. And then why should he study? Why should he try? Okay. So I'm saying this is what this whole like concept of taking a story and destructing it and using it as a tool to promote whatever the agenda is, okay, from those who are in control. I don't know if I answered the question. Like, wow, I went around, didn't I?
You're speaking to what's coming through. So I warned everyone that we were going to do an extreme spoiler alert, but it felt like, given your perspective and how you think about story, we're in this great moment to really talk about one of the hottest stories in town right now, which is the Black Panther. Really speaking at it through this lens of what is it to take, what is a story from another culture, and bring it into ours, and would love.
Well, keep in mind. Oh, go ahead.
important story of our time, and it's like it's in good ways and not. So I'd love for us, like, what can we figure out? What can we see that, okay, how is a story in service, and how is a story really not in service? And what are ways as we in this class who speak the spark sacred story for you know a new paradigm, you know, we're like, I love your critical mind of how do we examine the story? How do we engage our most critical thinking minds to engage and understand what is coming at us consciously and unconsciously? You know.
Okay. Yeah. Well, first of all, it is not a story that has anything to do with Africa. The story was created here, okay, under the guidance of Stan Lee, who produced almost all of the superheroes in the Marvel group, okay? So as we understand that, okay, and then the other thing about it is that it was like most fanciful and enjoyable, okay? And of course, like everything that comes out is basically that. The purpose of the movie makers in this movie was to make money, and that's what they did, okay? But now the other thing about that is like, okay, how do you make money? All right, well, you make something that everybody's dying to see, all right? And the dangers in that, when you make something that everybody's dying to see, or like I say, hungry to see, that the people swallow the poison without thinking that there might be some poison in it, okay? So when we look at the story like the Black Panther, first of all, it really doesn't reflect African culture. But you do have some instances where it's important for the Western world and where it is to see that. See, because everybody's like got this, oh, look at what the women are doing. Yay, 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 yay. But in the Western culture, women are beat down. So that's important for women to see women standing up strong, okay? So the thing about it is like in traditional Africa, before the invasions, etc., there was no need for that, okay? But anyway, now from the Western point of view, you see, so it's more of a Western story, all right? And then we see all the beauty of some, you know, and the African accents and everything like that. And like, we're so hungry for it that we swallow the poison. When you swallow the poison, okay, unknowingly, it becomes a part of you and starts destroying you. So we have to look at what's destructive. Now, the way my critique of the whole thing is we've gone from Tarzan to Never Never Land, okay? And between Tarzan and Never Never Land, we have, like, for example, we have other images. Hotel Rwanda, which is totally historically incomplete, which gives you the story at the end of the struggle of the Hutus who were thrown out of their country by the Tutsis, and they came and took it back. And then the Tutsis, they were armed by the French, the British, the United States, and others, and they threw the Tutsis out. So the Tutsis came back in to throw them back out, and that's where the movie starts. But it's originally Hutu land, and the Tutsis were brought in by the Belgians when they were colonizing it, okay? They don't tell that part. So we think, oh, those terrible Hutus, look what they're doing to the Tutsis, right? Okay, then the other story is like the Liberian story, the lie of the movie called Blood Diamond, right? So we go from Tarzan to Never Never Land, and in the meantime, the images of Africa we see are like Hotel Rwanda, you know, and Blood Diamond, and oh yeah, and then Children with Flies on it. But we never see Africa. See, we never see Africa. I lived in Africa. 98% of the people in Africa have not experienced any of that junk that you see, right? So the thing about it, let's not talk about it's about Africa. It's still about a distorted Western view of what Africa might be, okay? And the only guy in there I really felt any like identity with was the arch villain, okay? He's supposed to be a bad villain, dude. I mean, the only dude that talked like me, right? Okay? So the thing about it, these are the things. And then the other thing that's really terrible about it to me is that, like, it gives you the impression that there was an African monarchy, and there's no word in any African language that I've ever seen. And I know a couple, I speak a couple, and I've looked up, there's no word in any African language which gives you the same meaning of the European word king. There's no monarchy. If somebody did that, they'd kill him quick, okay? So they got this guy said, burn all this stuff that could heal people. Oh man, they'd kill that dude before they burned one of those flowers, right? So it gives us the idea that there's this monarchy, you know, this African, this single fight that says kill them, hang them up, sell them, or whatever like that. So it adds to that still old same mythology of, you know, what we are about. So these are the things that we, you know, that we have to remember, you know, when that's why I call it Never Never Land, okay? All right. Okay. So anyway, and there's again, it was very enjoyable as long as I decided not to think, you know. And so we get caught up in the enjoyment of it and never to analyze what really might be happening, which is something like highly suspicious. And therein lies the danger. Okay. The African-American dude, he's straight evil, man. He evil. Can't be redeemed. Kill yourself, right? See? So there it is, right? So I could go on, but I'll rest and let somebody else talk.
I definitely want, if people have questions, we've got a question from Tom, and then I want to talk about a new story. And Tom says, are there any movies or books you have seen, read, reflect in African culture as you have experienced it?
Yes. Okay. And there's several. Okay. And well, there's mythology. All right. And there is like kind of what's happening. Okay. Now, these are the people that I would suggest to read if you wanted to see the world from the African, perspective. Africa and Africans and the world from the African perspective. Okay. And one of the names is kind of complicated. I'll spell it and then you can maybe like hear it. One of the names of the persons his name is Vusamazulu Credo Mutwa. Okay. Vusu, V-U-S-U, M-A-Z-U-L-U, Vusumazulu. Credo, C-R-E-D-O, Mutwa, M-U-T-W-A. And he's got a book which tells the whole Zulu concept of the origin, God, et cetera, and God is feminine energy at that time. God is a woman. And it's called Indaba, I-N-D-A-B-A, my children. Indaba in Zulu means listen. It's called Indaba, my children. Okay. Okay. And then another book that's called, African, African Religion and Philosophy. And it's by John, middle initial S as in Sam. Mbiti is his last name, M-B-I-T-I, okay? And it's either called African Religion and Philosophy or African something in Philosophy. I mean, I read it about 40 years ago, so I don't remember exactly what it is, okay? And then, of course, there are books by Wole Soyinka, and he won the, I guess it's what is that Scottish or prize for writing? I forgot. What's the what?
The Nobel?
Not the Nobel. There's another one. Isn't there like a literary?
Booker
what anyway?
There's a bunch.
I forgot. But his name is Wole Soyinka. Wolesoyinka. Okay, Wole Soyinka. Okay, and you read things by him, and I'm calling on them because they kind of like like represent that. And there's one other guy who writes novels about kind of like the modern situation, and his name is Chinua Achebe, Chinua Achebe. So like, I mean, those are just off the top of my head. I probably got about 100 of them. Those are the ones I can think of now. But also those do kind of like reflect the African perspective of things, okay? And so there's not so much storytelling. If you want a story, you want an African story that I think is one of the best to kind of reflect how like African mythology sees the world. There's a book called The Palm Wine Drinkard, Palmwine Drinkard, The Palm Wine Drinkard. And it's by a guy named Amos Tutuola, Amostutuola. Okay. I know that's a lot of stuff, but like, yeah, hey, you ask, I like my brain starts spilling stuff. If I don't stop now, I'll be still talking 20 more books. So, so I'll stop there. But you start there and you begin to, like you'll find it, you'll find it. And then the thing about it, we'll see that like, the way we see the world is not the way the world is. It's just the way we see it. Okay. It's just the way we see it. Okay. All right.
Beautiful.
And somebody, I see another one here. I'm reading this now. What are your thoughts on Ta-Nehisi Coates' work as an African American? Well, I like him. I like his attitude, right? I like him, and I like his attitude because he's unapologetic, right? And everybody who speaks should be unapologetic, okay? And that doesn't mean to be politically incorrect. That doesn't mean to be disrespectful, but it means to speak the truth as you see it unapologetically, and to recognize it's the way you see it. It does not necessarily mean that everybody sees it that way. I expect no one to agree with me. They shouldn't unless they are me. You know, they should form their own opinion, their own attitude from their own perspective, and don't apologize for it. But then let everybody else alone who thinks differently, whether it's a different religion, a different culture, a different political structure, a different economic structure, a different whatever. Leave them alone. So we run around the world trying to force everybody to adopt this situation that doesn't work, called democracy. It doesn't work here, okay? And anybody who thinks it does haven't looked at it with clear view, because if it works, what's supposed to happen? The majority is supposed to rule, okay? Right now we got the 1% ruling, right? So why would we call it democracy, which is the demo, people, cracy, the rule of the people, when it has never, ever been that? It was designed not to be that. Okay, it was designed to be a sexist, which it still is. Women couldn't vote. Women had no rights. Racist, you know, we were captive and forced to work like it. Really genocidal, like let's still like marginalize or kill all the Native Americans, right? And economic elitism. Okay, if you're not rich, you have nothing. It was designed that way. It's still that way. It will always be that way. It was designed for a few super rich white men to control everything. It has never been different. It will never be different. That's why the rest of the world doesn't want it, even though the United States government is trying to force it down everybody's throat and say, you ought to accept democracy. They don't want it. I've been there. They don't want it. Okay.
That I'm really appreciating what you're saying is, and I'm thinking, you know, it's like just how much, how we couch a good story. You know, I was really raised believing that America was the best. You know, that told me over and over again. And so, though I, over the years, absorbed everything that you said, I also thought, this is the best. I was older and I was able to have more critical thinking. And I was like, whoa, wait a second, you know? And so I keep wondering about, how do we bring in a new story? What is a new story, and how are people ready? And I wanted just to go back to the end of the Black Panther, because the thing that I really appreciate talking to you, because you brought all these layers that I, you know, hadn't really keep in my, I did not have my best trained critiqued eyes looking for all those things that you mentioned, you know. But the thing that I caught at the very end was the thing that you mentioned also, is when we have such a story. To me, that was the oldest story in the world. It's in every fairy tale, you know.
Oh yeah.
Don't bring someone to the table and they're going to come back and they're going to destroy the creators of the table. You know, it's like in every single fairy tale, it's the oldest story. Like, don't banish people from the village. We'll come back into the village, you know. Sleep White, you know, Sleeping Beauty. It's like, it's all there, right? When I looked at this, I was like, oh my gosh, there's this moment where they have this opportunity to heal the story of the banished person and to bring them back into the village. And I have that Hawaiian traditions, they have Hawaiian tribes, they had very astute ways of how to bring people that had been banished back into the village through a rites of passage, you know. And like, oh my God, are they about to give us a new story? Are they about to say, you know, this, you know, and how many stories do we have about Black people being, you know, sent to jail over and over and over again? You know, it's like, are we about to get a new story? And at the last second, they didn't give it to us, right? I don't completely destroy
right. And see the thing,
and I was wondering, I was so ticked off when I went, and I was, do we have the story of the wounded healer, or like, do we just not have the stories? Is it not believable? Are we not for it? Because it's like they were so close to it that I couldn't believe. I had to hope they had several versions of that scene, and they ended up with one that was like most acceptable. I don't know, but I was curious to say. And then I also want to make sure, I'm just going to get this in. We've got about 15 minutes left with you, and I want to make sure that we get to get a story.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, real quickly about that. See, every culture had that. See, Hawaii was one of the last cultures to be destroyed. So they still have it, right? And if you look in the Kalahari among the Psalm people, okay, now the British call them Bushmen, which is like a derogatory name meaning savage, okay? But you look at the Psalm people, right? And the Khoi people, who the Dutch call Hottentot, which is a derogatory Dutch word meaning stutterer, because they click like that when they talk. So the Dutch call them stutterers or Hottentots, and the British call them savages or Bushmen. But there is a whole, like, now people are studying what they call the San people or the San Bushmen, you know, still got that derogatory term, and how they have their redeeming process. And every culture from back, there is no place on earth where cultures didn't do that, okay, until things got messed up by rational thought, all right? So every culture did it, okay? And the thing is, well, I agree with you that, like, they had an opportunity, but, you know, like, hey, man, like, what's a cheap way out? Don't nobody care too much about black men in America anyway. So that's killing, you know. So that, you know, that's, you know. So, I mean, that's how I see it. You know, everybody can see it their own way, enjoy it. However, yeah, I'm a black dude in America, man. I got to see it the way I see it and how it affects the people who I deal with every day, and how do they feel when they see that the image of them is like a rotten cat that, like, kills, you know, that chooses to die. Come on. Anyway, I'll be quiet.
Yeah. Interesting, the story. Like, yeah, I'm seeing the dangerousness of the story that's being sold.
Mm-hmm. And it's so covered with sugar that we just eat it all up.
Mm-hmm. Would you end our time with a great, wonderful, amazing story?
Well, I don't know if I got all that, but let me ask you a question. How much time?
We've got about 10 minutes.
Okay, it takes me approximately 10 minutes to clear my throat. So what I'll try to do is I'll try to hurry. Give me a second to think of one that'll fit in that time that might be very, very good. Okay. I'm sure all of you have heard of Nancy stories, right? Is anybody who's not familiar? Okay. All right. Well, this is how I'll tell this one because this is how I tell it. Okay. You see, there was a spider named Anansi. Now, Anansi, well, let me just tell you about Anansi. He was known to be lazy, right? Mm-hmm. But the thing about Anansi is Anansi wanted to be great. He wanted to be great. He wanted everybody to recognize him as great, you know? But Anansi knew that, like, if you want to be a great, you know, architect, you've got to build a great building. If you want to be a great doctor, you've got to heal people. If you want to be a great farmer, you've got to farm. If you want to be a great anything, you must study hard. But Anansi was like many and most and maybe all modern day politicians. He didn't want to do anything. He just wanted people to say he was great. We tried to figure out, how could I be great? Now, let me tell you what happened back in the beginning of time when God was a woman. See, God was merciful, God was forgiving, and God was generous. So what did she do? God gave us two of everything. You know, gave us two hands, you know, we could do it with one, gave us, you know, 2 feet, actually gave us 2 eyes, we can see with one, gave us 2 nostrils, we could breathe with one, right? Gave us 2 ears, we could hear with one, gave us 2 lips, I've never tried to kiss with one, and I won't. But however, she was generous. So in the beginning, she gave us 2 big handfuls of knowledge. So we'd have all the knowledge that we needed. And everybody said, oh, that's cool. But you know, when some people give you stuff, you don't care about it that much. You know, you lay it down. People would get up in the morning, say, hey, I'm on my way to work. I forgot my knowledge. So what? Like that, right? And people would go to a restaurant, they leave their knowledge at the restaurant, say, oh, I forgot my knowledge, I'll go back and get it or whatever, right? Well, Anansi said, you know, if I can gather up all the world's knowledge, and everybody will say, oh, how great I am. They'll come to me and say, oh, Anansi, you are so great, you have all the world's knowledge. That's what I'll do. So Anansi began to gather up the world's knowledge. When people would go to a restaurant and walk in, he said, oh, I'll take this to them. And Anansi wouldn't. He'd keep it for himself, okay? He'd see people carrying packages and try to carry their knowledge. He'd say, hey, let me carry that. I'll be with you. I'll get to your house. But he wouldn't. He'd take a curve and he would keep their knowledge. And Nancy would even crawl through the window as a spider and he would take people's knowledge for himself until finally he had all the world's knowledge. He said, tomorrow people will wake up and they'll say, oh, Nancy, you have all the world's knowledge. Please, please, please. Why don't you just give us a small piece of knowledge? And he knew he was going to be great. He knew he was going to be like very, very fantastic. But he thought, just a minute, suppose somebody steals this knowledge from me as easily as I've stolen it from everybody else. I know what I'll do. He called the workers, make me a big iron pot with a solid lid, and nobody will be able to take it from me. So they made him a big iron pot, and he put all the world's knowledge in it, and he put on this iron lid real tight. He said, aha, yes, now, just a minute, suppose somebody comes and steals the pot. Because he was ready to lay down thinking about how great he would be in the morning, and it occurred to him, suppose somebody steals the pot, I better hide the pot. So he was dragging the pot outside of his house. It was big and heavy, and he drug it next to a big baobab tree, and he thought he'd hide it high in the tree, and then nobody would be able to take it from him, but he couldn't figure out. He'd reach for the tree and hold it, but he couldn't hold the pot, and he'd reach for the pot and hold the pot, but he couldn't hold the tree, and he was out there, and he woke his daughter up, and his daughter woke up, and she said, Daddy, what are you doing? He said, well, I gotta like it. She said, well, Daddy, spin a web, tie it to the pot, tie it to your back, and go up the tree. He said, aha, and that's what he did. He spun a web, tied the pot to his back, went up to the tree, put the pot high in the tree, crawled back down the tree, went inside, and fell asleep dreaming about how great he would be the next day when they would say, oh, Anansi, you are so great, you are so great, you have the world's knowledge. And he woke bolt upright. Just a minute. If I've got all the knowledge in this pot, how is it that my daughter knew that I should tie it to my back? Ha! In his anger, he crawled back up the tree, opened the pot, and poured all the knowledge back on the earth. And that's why y'all still know something. Now, God, being who she was, she said, look, I've got to make it harder to get. So that's why now, if you want knowledge, it's not just handed to you in your hand. You got to go through experience. You got to go through strife, struggle, labor, sometimes sacrifice, sometimes risking your life, sometimes coming out scarred. But God said, now, if they get this knowledge, I'm going to put this. She said, I love my children so much, I'm going to put it someplace so they will never, ever, ever lose it. Aha! I'll put it behind the hardest bone in the human body, which is the skull. So that's why we have knowledge in our heads. That's how come you still know something. And that's the Anansi story. So anyway, you know, and then of course, you know, I got twists to it too, right? And my twist is, see, now when this knowledge was spilled all over the world, the Europeans came and took it and said it was theirs. Now, they did hide it in books. You know, there's a lot in the Vatican, right? They pretend, oh, this is ours, okay? And the Pope is no good, because if he was any good, he'd give all that gold he stole back to Africa. That'd be the first thing he'd do. But no. So we have to go back and find it. Us Africans have to go back and find that knowledge and reclaim it. And it's going to be a struggle, but we can do it. And just remember, once we get it and it's here, nobody can take it from us, you know? So anyway. And the same thing I would say for anybody, including women. Women, we don't have the story of women, right? And then I'll say this real quickly, the trouble with white people, and I know you're, oh, who are you to say what's wrong with white people? Here's the trouble with white people. White people don't have a White History Month. So therefore you're celebrating these what do you call it, like military men and rich men who really care nothing about you. George Washington could have crossed the Delaware 100 times and nobody would have batted an eye. But when George Washington crossed the Delaware with 110 young white people, they jumped on a British army of 10,000 and beat them. But George Washington could have crossed 100 times. It wasn't about George. It was about the people. I bet you don't know the names of those people who were rowing that boat. And the most important person on the boat is the one who is rowing. And that picture we see of George standing there with the flag unfurled, he's standing there. The first rule of boating safety is, first of all, sit down on the boat. He was the least important person in that crossing. He could have stayed on the other side and those 1,100 kids could have went over there and done everything they needed to do, okay? So my point is this, who are those people in this boat? Those are the people that white people should look for, okay? Those are the people that you should say, these are our heroes, which is people like everyday white people, not the super rich, okay? And because of that, you celebrate the super rich, okay, and think, oh, these are our heroes. No, they're the heroes only for the super rich, and your heroes are people who look like you, who act like you. And if you get Howard Zinn, Z-I-N-N, Howard Zinn, his book called The People's History of the United States, you'll find some of those heroes that you're looking for and references to which will lead you further. And I hope I haven't shot over the time, because I do start talking, it's hard to shut me up.
This is great. I just appreciate, I'm sure you've ripped at the seams of many of the ways that we've been looking at and examining stories. And Noel, you've got 3 minutes left. But Noel's come in with a good bomb diggity question to end on.
Okay.
But
all right.
She says, you mentioned the racism in Disney movies. Do you see some of the movements towards indigenous stories like Moana to contain the same dose of poison for the medicine we're hungry for? so many of my feminist friends were so excited to see the recognition with Gaia, the reconciliation with Gaia.
Oh, you mean Milana?
Yeah.
Okay, Milana, let me tell you about that. Okay, first of all, I don't know if you know the story, but the story is a very important story. But the story is real simple. There's a woman, and the emperor said, like, everybody's got to like give their their son as a warrior, or the male. Her father was ill and infirm, so she went and joined, right? So when she joined, then what they did, like, they knew she was a woman, right? And they recognized her valor in battle and everything like that. It was cool, okay? And when she was through, she came back to her village. Everybody said, oh, you're cool. Now, that's the synopsis, so I could spend an hour on the story. But the point is that it made it look like, oh, you mean Moana, not Mulan. Okay, the Polynesian story. I'm going to tell you what, I haven't seen it. I'll see it and then I'll find out, but I haven't seen it because, like, Disney just sucks to me. I did, but I'll pardon me for going through the thing with Mulan, but I'll look at Moana and see, okay, and see what's up. But when you have, like, for example, I don't know if Moana, it's one single culture of people, but I'm sure those images of what's good and what's bad is still based on what is dark and what's light, because that's the Disney, paradigm. And then when it comes to what's dark and what's light, it's always about, we translate that to people subconsciously, okay? Mm-hmm. So pardon me for not knowing and pardon me for going on about Mulan, but I thought you said Mulan and not Moana, okay?
I think I got a really great lesson recently. I was at an amazing talk and someone said, we're in dark times. And Belvie Rooks, who's an amazing activist in the Bay Area, stood up and she's an African-American woman, and she said, please consider how you use your language. Associate dark times as being a negative thing. What are you saying over and over again? And it really kind of put me into this existential question, honestly, because I understand also the darkness as being the mystery, which is the place if you're there without judgment, understanding and understand, then it's that willingness to be in the blindness that allows you to see what's there. And so, oh gosh, if we could unfold the language that we have.
And pardon me for interrupting you, but see, when she said it's dark times, she meant these are bad and negative times.
Right.
See, because darkness is cool. You know. Right. Langston Hughes, Black Like Me. His poem, Black Like Me, rested pale leaning a tall, thin tree, night falling gently, black like me. Okay. So you see, that's a little different. But like when we talk about Western culture, anything dark is bad.
Right.
Okay. And so like we use the language like, black lie, I can go through, black lie is terrible. A white lie is all right. Black magic, terrible. White magic, that's not, I won't cuss, but that's a bunch of bull. You see? And that's purely, absolutely racist to say white lie, black lie, white magic, black magic. That's just racist. And of course, we don't know it. I grew up in the same language. It's my visit to, like, let's see, right now, 7 and 4 and it's 11, 13 other countries, okay, that began to enlighten me, interacting with the people there, And we won't know until we get out of here and see other people as they function as themselves, okay?
Thank you.
Well, thank you for listening, and I hope my tirade didn't set too many people off. And
well, I think we got a lot of us thinking in a lot of different ways, and I really appreciate your boldness and also the generosity in which you gave us and how to listen.
If I can give it back to you, thank you for listening. Most people shut me off after about 5 minutes, Thank you tremendously for listening. Thank you for including me, Leah. I want you to know that I really enjoy the depth of your questions, and I appreciate your willingness to see beneath the surface and continue to look. And there you'll find you looking back at you, and it will be the real you from thousands of years ago. But like Public Enemy, the rap group said, don't believe the hype.
That's right.
All right.